Good morning, Dr. Sporer. Good, thank you. How are you? So, Katie, when does the Awareness Month for Essential Tremor begin?
This month, we're like in the middle of it.
We're in it now, okay.
We're in it, yeah.
Okay. I just had the opportunity yesterday to interview a friend of mine who is a volunteer at MCI who has been dealing with essential tremor for years and years. So I got a lot of good information from him, but would love to hear your perspective on the condition and its prevalence and how it can be treated, if at all. And
Sure. So, essential tremor is, well, first of all, there's lots of causes of tremor out there, from different medication reactions, alcohol abuse, anxiety disorders, neurodegenerative diseases such as Parkinson's disease, and then, of course, essential tremor. Most people who get a tremor are often concerned about whether or not they have Parkinson's disease, but there is one key difference in most cases. Parkinson's disease tends to be a resting tremor. When somebody is not moving, they have a tremor.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas essential tremor is kind of the opposite. It's what we call an intentional tremor, where if you're sitting there talking to them, you may not notice that they have a tremor, but when they go to do an action such as write their name or pick up a coffee cup or shave their face, they have a severe tremor. And so it actually can, really limit somebody's activities of daily living. I've seen extreme cases where people have to prop their elbows up on the wall and then kind of move their face around just to shave their face, without slicing themselves open. And it makes things like eating and, writing checks and things like that very, very difficult.
Mm-hmm.
The treatments, unlike Parkinson's, where there actually are very good medical treatments, the treatments for essential tremor are notoriously not very effective, and most of them are some form of sedative or tranquilizer to just kind of decrease the excitability of all your neurons, and so they have a sedating effect or slowing the thought processes down. That's the most common kind of side effect, is people say they just feel low energy as a result of medications that they're taking.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not super effective either. They still have the tremor, it's just not as bad. And so some other treatments that exist, which are newer on the scene, have to do with disrupting the abnormal circuitry in the brain. And so we don't understand perfectly exactly how essential tremor comes to be, but what we know so far is that everything that your brain does happens in circuits. And so, the model of, one cell in your brain sends a signal down to your arm to move is not really a good model. A better model is to imagine, electrical circuits going around and around and around and constantly being modified, so that if you go to pick up your coffee cup, the second that you pick it up, you're weighing it, is it lighter, is it heavier, how much muscle do you need to do, and then make sure that the location in space is correct. Your brain is modifying that movement. Every millisecond it's modifying so that it reaches your lips perfectly. If that circuit is disrupted, then those, second by second modifications are disrupted, and so you get these jerky movements, and that is the tremor. And so there's something abnormal about the circuitry, the movement circuitry, that causes tremor, and what we can do is disrupt that circuitry to make the movements more smooth again.
And how do you do that?
Well, there's a specific place in the brain called the thalamus, which is kind of like a relay station for all other parts of the brain. and we found a specific point within the thalamus that has to do with tremor. And if you can cause a disruption either by causing an ablation, a small hole in that part of the brain, or by providing electrical stimulation to that part of the brain, you can have a beneficial effect on tremor. And so the three main ways to do that are radiosurgery, stereotactic radiosurgery, where we focus small beams of radiation to that one point within the thalamus, and then ablate those cells to disrupt that abnormal circuit. The second would be deep brain stimulation, where we implant an electrode into that part of the brain, and again, introduce a small electrical current to disrupt the abnormal circuit. The benefit of that one is that it's modifiable. You can turn it up or down, or you can change the amplitude or the frequency of that electrical current to get the desired effect. And then the third and most recent would be high-frequency ultrasound. It's a similar concept to the radiosurgery, but instead of radiation, it uses focused beams of ultrasound, and where they meet, just like a magnifying glass, it's where those beams meet, it's actually a very high energy area, and we can cause an ablation or a disruption of that circuit.
Okay.
The benefit of that one, unlike the radiation, is that you can turn the power down and try it out while the patient is awake and see if it's going to work or not, like see if we're in the exact right location. And if we're satisfied with the results, then you turn up the power to create a permanent ablation at that level, at that location.
Okay.
And so, there's benefits and risks to each of those three treatments. And what we have here at Baptist is the resources and expertise or capability to do all three, which is highly unusual, very unique. And so we can cater our treatment recommendations and plans to, the individual and, which one of those might be best for them.
And when we talk about these three different treatment options, is one any more effective than the other? Have you found?
No, they can all be very effective. They can all be very effective. The one that we probably have the most experience with is deep brain stimulation, only because the technology is not as new as, the high-frequency ultrasound. And again, that procedure is done awake. And so a patient will be, trying to lift a cup of coffee. We test it out in the operating room, and they can't bring it up without shaking, the water out of the mug. Mm-hmm. We put the electrode in, turn it on to test it out, and the patient is essentially as good as new. It's very satisfying, very dramatic change. The benefits are usually not subtle. And so it's not uncommon to have somebody laughing or crying out of surprise or joy at the results of that of that treatment in the operating room.
It sounds like that's a more invasive treatment, though, right?
It is.
There's something that it gets implanted in the chest as well?
Yeah, that's the battery that provides that electrical stimulation. And so, I don't know how detailed you want to get, the advantages and disadvantages to each of them, and also, the patient's ability to tolerate one procedure versus another, and the patient's ability to actually follow up with us or not. And so, that's something that needs follow-up because we need to be checking the battery and all these things. And so that's less ideal for somebody that, has difficult transportation or difficult, they live somewhere else, those types of things. The other two options are done, they're permanent, and
the other two options are a one-time procedure?
That's correct.
Mm-hmm.
That's correct.
Does the patient require monitoring after the procedure?
Yeah, well, we of course have follow up to check on them after the procedure, but no, they don't need long term routine monitoring. We check on them and make sure that they're doing well after the procedure. Obviously, we want to see what how much benefit they're getting, but then after that, there's really nothing more to follow up on.
Mm-hmm. And with essential tremor, it affects only the hands, correct?
No. Those types of tremors can affect the head. They can affect the voice. And so there's all kinds of essential tremor, but yeah, the most common would be the arms and hands, and that's also the most likely to cause somebody to have a disability. People with these other types of tremors, it's bothersome to them, but they can still, do all those things that I listed because their hands are not as affected.
Is Robert Kennedy, is he somebody who suffers from ET because his voice for years has sounded...
I'm not sure.
Yeah. Okay, so you had mentioned before that it was very unusual to have all three treatment options under one roof.
Yeah.
As far as you know, is Baptist the only entity in South Florida that has all three?
Well, unfortunately, we can't say that because I believe that Del Rey has the high-frequency ultrasound and DBS. I don't know about radiosurgery, but I assume that they do have that. Mm-hmm. Lots of people have that. But certainly in Dade County, that would be correct, okay. And Broward as well.
But Dr. Spohr, the Sperling Medical Group in Del Rey, I thought it was just a diagnostic imaging center.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know the answer to that. I mean, Katie, if you find that out, then of course we can advertise that as being...
Yeah, I think we are. I mean, my only question was UHealth. I wasn't sure, but if you're sure about UHealth...
No, UHealth doesn't have the HIFU.
They don't have HIFU, right?
Right.
HIFU, I think locally it's just Miami Children's. But in reference to the all three is what I think Peter asked, right? Like, yes. The only place that has DBS and HIFU or all two.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if the place in Del Rey is affiliated with Del Rey Medical Center, you know what I mean?
Oh,
who probably does have DBS and radiosurgery, but if they're separate entities...
Right. I mean, I'll find out,
yeah.
But I thought it was just a radiologist that opened a small mom and pop here.
Right.
Also has a clinic also has a spot in New York. So for the snowbirds,
okay.
Del Rey's perfect. But I thought it was just diagnostic imaging.
Okay.
But I'll look into it because I think that would be great if we can just mention. We are the only place, really here in South Florida that has both of these service options under one roof. This is great, to offer folks that have essential tremors. So okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Doctor, how prevalent is essential tremor?
I have to get back to you. I don't know the exact numbers. I'm sure it's online.
Yeah, I have it, Peter. So I'll share that with you.
Okay.
I pulled a report. Actually, the Insight Tech, Dr. Spohr, gave me those facts and figures, not only in the United States, but locally, the prevalence of folks that have essential tremors, and of that prevalent population, who would essentially be a candidate for this procedure. They broke it down.
Yeah, okay, great,
so,
perfect.
Yeah, I have that.
Okay, perfect. If you can share that with me, that would be great. And Katie, I think I sent you some material from the foundation, which my friend was a director of for a number of years. So that has some information as well. Doctor, do you foresee in the future any new advances in treating ET?
I think that probably, once we get down to a non-invasive, highly effective, short duration treatment, it's going to be difficult to improve upon that. And so the advances are likely going to be in the technology that we currently have, just like the iPhone has gotten better and better. It was amazing when it came out, but it keeps getting better and better, and more powerful and probably shorter duration. The other thing is the imaging. Part of the way that we target these beams of radiation or ultrasound or whatever is with imaging. And so as that technology gets more and more accurate, our ability to deliver that energy in an efficient manner will become, just shorter and shorter and more efficient.
Okay. Do you have any other thoughts about ET or our role in treating it?
I think that one thing to emphasize is that a lot of people out there just think of tremor as a part of getting old. And although essential tremor does tend to affect, people, more as they get older, it's not normal. Just like memory loss is not normal. And so, they should explore their options. There are treatments out there, and you don't have to just live with it.
Okay. How many patients do you think you've treated with ET?
Well, in my, life, I've treated hundreds of patients with essential tremor. At Baptist, though, we have not, we haven't started that HIFU yet, so we're not gonna emphasize that aspect of it yet.
So we shouldn't be mentioning HIFU in this
No, we should
article?
be mentioning HIFU, but I wouldn't be emphasizing how, I wouldn't be throwing out numbers because
Okay.
whoever signs up is going to be our first.
Right. Gotcha. Okay. Good. Well, I think between the information I got from my interview yesterday and then this morning with you, I have enough to work with. If I have any follow-up questions, I'll run them through Katie.
Just reach out.
Yep. And thank you very much for your time.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Yep. Have a good day.
Thanks, Katie.
This was awesome.
Thanks for setting it up, Katie.
Thanks.
All right, bye.
Bye.